Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I should have known something was wrong the moment I pulled into my parents' driveway that Saturday afternoon and saw Tyler's brand new BMW parked right where I usually put my work truck. The gleaming black sedan looked completely out of place, next to Dad's weathered Ford and Mom's practical Honda, but there it sat like some kind of statement. I grabbed the bag of premium steaks I'd brought for the barbecue and walked around back to find the whole family already gathered on the deck. Tyler stood in the center of the group chest, puffed out wearing clothes that probably cost more than I made in a week. The moment he saw me, his face lit up with that familiar smirk I'd been seeing since we were kids. Well, look who finally showed up, Tyler announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. I was just telling everyone about my big news. I just got promoted to manager of a 5-star hotel downtown. Meanwhile, you're still out there playing in the dirt with your little landscaping hobby. The laughter that erupted from our parents cut through me like a blade. Mom actually clapped her hands together in delight while Dad slapped Tyler on the back with obvious pride. They turned to look at me with those expressions I knew so well, the ones that said I was the disappointing son who never quite measured up to their golden boy. Unlike someone, Mom said with a pointed look in my direction, shaking her head as if my mere presence was somehow embarrassing. I'd been dealing with this dynamic my entire adult life. When Tyler decided he wanted to study hospitality management, our parents didn't hesitate to write check after check for his tuition at the fancy private college across town. When I asked for help buying commercial lawnmowers and landscaping equipment to start my own business 3 years ago, they told me I needed to learn responsibility and figure it out myself. Tyler got a graduation party with 200 guests when he finished college. When I landed my first major landscaping contract with the city, they barely acknowledged it over dinner. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway announced the arrival of our extended family. Uncle Robert came through the gate first, followed by Aunt Patricia, and then my cousins Jake and Samantha with their kids in tow. Tyler immediately launched into his announcement again, his voice carrying that tone of superiority that made my stomach turn. You guys are looking at the newest assistant manager of the Grand Royal Resort. Tyler proclaimed, straightening an expensive-looking tie that seemed ridiculously formal for a backyard barbecue. 5-star luxury downtown location, the whole 9 yards. Uncle Robert whistled appreciatively, while Aunt Patricia gushed about how proud she was. Even my cousins seemed genuinely impressed, asking questions about the hotel and Tyler's responsibilities. I tried to interject when there was a brief pause in the conversation. Actually, I've got some pretty exciting news myself. I began thinking about the 3 new commercial contracts I'd signed just this week. I just landed accounts with the Riverside Shopping Complex, the new medical center on Grant Street, and... That's nice, Braden, Mom interrupted without even looking at me, turning her attention back to Tyler. Honey, tell us more about this promotion. Will you have your own office? Tyler's grin widened as he launched into elaborate details about his supposed new position. According to him, he'd be managing a staff of 40 employees, overseeing guest services and handling VIP clients. He painted a picture of luxury suites, celebrity guests, and high-stakes business decisions that sounded more like something out of a movie than reality. As Tyler continued his performance, I felt something sticky and cold seeping through my work shirt. I looked down to see barbecue sauce spreading across my chest. Tyler held an empty squeeze bottle with mock surprise on his face. Oops, sorry about that, bro, he said with obvious insincerity. Guess I got a little carried away with my enthusiasm. Maybe you should change into something more appropriate for a celebration anyway. The family laughed again, treating it like harmless fun between brothers. I was wiping sauce off my shirt when my phone started buzzing insistently in my pocket. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. Excuse me, I said, stepping away from the group. I need to take this. Hello, is this Braden Matthews with Matthews Landscaping? The voice was professional business-like. Yes, this is Braden. My name is Marcus Rodriguez, and I'm the Regional Director for Southwest Luxury Resorts. I've been observing your work at several properties around the valley, and I'm very impressed with what I've seen. Would it be possible for us to meet this afternoon? I have a business proposition that I think you'll find extremely interesting. My heart started racing. Southwest Luxury Resorts was one of the biggest hospitality companies in the region, known for their upscale properties and impeccable standards. I glanced back at my family still gathered around Tyler as he continued his self-congratulatory speech. Actually, yes, I said. I could meet you in about an hour if that works. Perfect. There's a coffee shop called Brew and Bean on Central Avenue downtown. I'll be there at 4:30. I hung up and rejoined the group, my mind spinning with possibilities. Tyler was now showing off what appeared to be an employee badge, though from where I stood I couldn't make out the details clearly. "Who is that?" Dad asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't particularly interested in the answer. "Just a potential client," I replied, deciding to keep the details to myself for now. Tyler scoffed. "Let me guess, another lawn mowing gig. Maybe they want you to trim some bushes." The family chuckled again at Tyler's joke. I forced a smile and nodded, checking my watch. If I left in the next few minutes, I'd have just enough time to change clothes and make it to the meeting. I excused myself from the barbecue, claiming I had an urgent client meeting that couldn't wait. Tyler made another joke about someone actually wanting to hire me on a weekend, which earned him more laughs from the family. I drove home quickly, changed into clean khakis and a button-down shirt, and headed downtown to Brew and Bean. Marcus Rodriguez turned out to be a distinguished man in his 40s with graying temples and the kind of presence that commanded respect. He was waiting at a corner table with what appeared to be a thick folder of documents spread out in front of him. When I introduced myself, his handshake was firm and confident. "Braden, thank you for meeting me on such short notice," Marcus said as we both sat down. "I'll get straight to the point. I've been keeping an eye on your work for the past 6 months. The landscaping you did at the Meridian office complex was exceptional. The way you incorporated native desert plants with modern design elements showed real creativity and environmental consciousness. I felt a surge of pride. The Meridian project had been one of my most challenging jobs, requiring me to work within strict water conservation guidelines while creating an aesthetically pleasing environment for a high-end business complex. I also noticed your work at the Sunset Villas residential development and the renovation you completed at Phoenix General Hospital," Marcus continued. "Your attention to detail and ability to work within budget constraints while maintaining quality is exactly what we need." He slid a business proposal across the table. The Southwest Luxury Resorts logo was embossed at the top of the document. "We're expanding our presence in Arizona and Nevada," Marcus explained. "We currently operate 8 resort properties in the Southwest, and we're opening 4 new locations over the next 18 months. We need a landscaping contractor who can handle the design, installation, and ongoing maintenance for all 12 properties." My hands trembled slightly as I flipped through the proposal. The scope of work was massive, covering everything from entrance gardens and pool areas to golf course maintenance and special event decorating. The timeline spanned 3 years, with options for renewal. Then I saw the compensation figure. $2.4 million over 3 years. I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. This single contract would be worth more than my landscaping business had generated in its entire 3-year existence. "I know this is a significant opportunity," Marcus said, watching my reaction carefully. "We've done our due diligence on your business practices, financial stability, and customer satisfaction ratings. You consistently receive outstanding reviews, you've never missed a deadline, and your pricing is fair and transparent." We spent the next hour discussing details. Marcus explained that Southwest Luxury Resorts had recently acquired several struggling properties and was investing heavily in upgrades and improvements. They needed a landscaping partner who could start immediately and scale up operations quickly. If you're interested, we can have contracts drawn up by early next week, Marcus said as our meeting concluded. I should mention that this would be an exclusive arrangement. We'd expect you to prioritize our properties and potentially expand your staff significantly. I drove back to my parents' house in a daze, my mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. This opportunity could transform my entire life, validating every risk I'd taken when I started my own business, instead of following a more conventional career path. When I arrived back at the barbecue, the celebration for Tyler was still in full swing. He'd apparently gone home and returned with even more props for his performance. Now he was wearing what looked like an expensive suit jacket over his polo shirt and was showing everyone a collection of business cards. "These are my new manager business cards," Tyler announced proudly, handing them out like precious gifts. The hotel ordered 500 of them with my name and title. Aunt Patricia examined one of the cards with obvious admiration. "Assistant Manager of Guest Services, that sounds so important." Tyler was basking in the attention when his phone rang. He answered it with an exaggerated professional tone. "Tyler Matthews, Assistant Manager speaking." "Yes, I can absolutely handle that. No problem, I'll take care of it first thing Monday morning." When he hung up, he turned to the family with a theatrical sigh. "Sorry about that, everyone. Work calls even on weekends when you're in management. That was my supervisor asking me to handle a special VIP guest situation." Dad patted Tyler on the shoulder with obvious pride. "That's what happens when you work your way up in a quality organization, son." Tyler's phone buzzed with what appeared to be a text message. His expression shifted slightly as he read it, but he quickly recovered his confident demeanor. "Actually, I've got some even bigger news," Tyler announced, his voice taking on an air of mystery. "I wasn't going to say anything yet, but since we're all family here, I'm bringing someone special to dinner next week. Her name is Casey, and let's just say she's a model." Mom gasped with delight while the female relatives immediately started asking questions. Tyler played up the mystery, claiming Casey was signed with an agency in Los Angeles and was temporarily staying in Phoenix for a modeling assignment. "We met at the hotel," Tyler explained. "She was staying in one of our luxury suites, and we got to talking. One thing led to another, and now we're dating. She's absolutely stunning, and she's really impressed with my position at the resort." As Tyler continued spinning his tale about this mysterious model girlfriend, I noticed something that made me pause. When his phone had buzzed earlier, I'd caught a glimpse of the screen. The text wasn't from work at all. It was from someone named Casey. And the preview I'd seen read something like, "Can you still cover my dinner tonight? I'm short on..." The message had been cut off, but it didn't sound like the kind of text a successful model would be sending to her hotel manager boyfriend. "I think we should plan a special dinner for next week," Mom said excitedly. "We can meet Casey and celebrate Tyler's promotion properly." Tyler beamed at the suggestion, already planning what sounded like an elaborate event. As the family discussed menu options and guest lists, I quietly slipped away from the conversation, my mind still processing everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. The contrast between Tyler's theatrical celebration and my own genuinely life-changing opportunity felt surreal. While my brother was performing for an audience that was all too eager to believe his stories, I was sitting on news that would genuinely shock them all. But something told me to wait to learn more about Tyler's situation before revealing my own cards. I spent the entire following week in a whirlwind of activity. Marcus had been true to his word about moving quickly. By Tuesday morning, I had preliminary contracts in my email inbox. By Thursday, I was meeting with Southwest Luxury Resorts legal team to review terms and conditions. The whole process felt like a dream that I was afraid to wake up from. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about Tyler's sudden transformation. In the span of a few weeks, my chronically underemployed younger brother had supposedly landed a management position at a luxury hotel, started dating a model, and acquired a BMW that probably cost more than most people make in a year. Something didn't add up, and my curiosity was getting the better of me. On Wednesday afternoon, I decided to drive by the Grand Royal Resort that Tyler claimed to work at. I'd done some online research and found that there was indeed a Grand Royal Resort downtown. But when I arrived at the address, I was confused by what I saw. The building was certainly a hotel, but it looked nothing like the five-star luxury property Tyler had described. The Grand Royal Resort turned out to be a modest three-story building with a small parking lot and a simple entrance. It was clean and well-maintained, but it was clearly a mid-range business hotel, not the opulent resort Tyler had been describing to the family. I parked across the street and watched the entrance for about 20 minutes, hoping to catch a glimpse of Tyler coming or going. Instead, I saw a steady stream of business travelers with rolling suitcases and a few tourists consulting maps and guidebooks. Nothing about the scene suggested the high-end clientele and celebrity guests that Tyler claimed to serve. Friday evening arrived with the much-anticipated family dinner to meet Casey and celebrate Tyler's success. I arrived at my parents' house to find the dining room decorated with balloons and streamers, as if Tyler had graduated from college again. Mom had prepared her famous pot roast, and Dad had opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for special occasions. Tyler arrived fashionably late, making a grand entrance through the front door. He was wearing the same expensive suit I'd seen him in at the barbecue, but this time it was paired with shiny dress shoes and what appeared to be a gold watch. "Sorry we're running behind," Tyler called out as he walked into the living room. Casey had to finish up a photo shoot this afternoon. He stepped aside to reveal his girlfriend, and I had to admit she was attractive. Casey appeared to be in her mid-20s with blonde hair and a bright smile. She was wearing a simple black dress and heels, but nothing about her appearance screamed professional model to me. "Casey, I'd like you to meet my family." Tyler said, his chest puffed out with obvious pride. "This is my mom and dad, and this is my older brother, Braden." Casey seemed genuinely nice as she shook hands and made small talk with everyone. She complimented Mom on the house and asked polite questions about Dad's work at the post office. When she turned to me, her demeanor was friendly and natural. "Tyler's told me so much about you, Casey said. "He mentioned you have your own landscaping business. That must be really rewarding, being your own boss." Before I could respond, Tyler jumped in with his characteristic condescension. "Well, it's more like a lawn care service than a real business," Tyler said with a dismissive wave. "Braden's still figuring out what he wants to do with his life." Casey looked confused by Tyler's tone, but she didn't say anything. As we moved to the dining room, I noticed her glancing around the house with what seemed like genuine interest rather than the bored expression I might expect from someone accustomed to luxury hotels and high-end photo shoots. During dinner, Tyler dominated the conversation with stories about his work at the hotel. According to him, he'd handled 3 crisis situations just this week, including a demanding celebrity guest who refused to stay in anything less than the penthouse suite. "The thing about working in luxury hospitality," Tyler explained while cutting his pot roast, "is that you have to be ready for anything. Yesterday, I had to coordinate with our concierge team to arrange a private helicopter tour for a guest who decided at the last minute that he wanted to see the Grand Canyon. Dad listened with obvious fascination, while Mom hung on every word." Tyler was clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "What kind of celebrities stay at your hotel?" Aunt Patricia asked from across the table. Tyler paused dramatically before answering. "Well, I can't really name names because of confidentiality agreements, but let's just say you'd recognize some faces if you saw our guest registry." As Tyler continued his performance, I watched Casey's reactions carefully. She seemed to be paying attention, but there was something in her expression that suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by her boyfriend's stories. A couple of times I caught her looking at Tyler with what appeared to be confusion or concern. The conversation shifted when Mom asked Casey about her modeling career. "Oh, it's just something I do part-time," Casey said modestly. "I work with a few local photographers, mostly for small businesses and websites. Nothing too glamorous." Tyler quickly jumped in to embellish her story. "Don't be so modest, babe," he said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Casey's represented by one of the top agencies in Los Angeles. She's just being humble because she doesn't like to brag. Casey looked uncomfortable with Tyler's exaggeration, but she didn't correct him directly. Actually, she said carefully, I'm not really represented by anyone right now. I'm just doing freelance work while I figure out my next steps. Tyler's jaw tightened slightly at her honesty, but he covered it with a forced laugh. She's being way too modest, he insisted. Casey's going to be huge once the right people discover her. As the evening progressed, Tyler regaled everyone with increasingly elaborate stories about his hotel management responsibilities. He claimed to have implemented new customer service protocols, negotiated contracts with vendors, and even contributed to menu development for the hotel restaurant. During a brief lull in the conversation, my phone vibrated with an email notification. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart skip a beat. The message was from Marcus Rodriguez with the subject line, Contract Finalization. I tried to read the email discreetly under the table. The first few lines confirmed that Southwest Luxury Resorts had approved all contract terms and wanted to schedule a signing ceremony for Monday morning. There was also mention of an initial payment that would be deposited into my business account as soon as the contracts were executed. Braden, you've been awfully quiet tonight, Mom observed, pulling my attention back to the conversation. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, I replied, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Just tired from a long week. Tyler smirked at my response. Probably worn out from all that lawn mowing. Physical labor can be exhausting when you're not used to working with your brain. Casey shot Tyler a sharp look, clearly uncomfortable with his comment. I think physical work is really respectable, she said firmly. There's nothing wrong with building something with your own hands. Tyler's expression darkened at Casey's contradiction, but he forced another laugh. Of course, he said quickly. I just meant that management work requires a different kind of energy. The rest of the dinner passed without major incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there were undercurrents of tension that nobody was acknowledging. Tyler's stories seemed increasingly rehearsed. Casey appeared uncomfortable with his embellishments, and I was sitting on information that would completely change the dynamic of every conversation we'd had about success and achievement. As the evening wound down, Tyler made a grand announcement that surprised everyone. Actually, there's one more piece of news I wanted to share, Tyler said, standing up and putting his arm around Casey. I've been thinking a lot about the future lately, and I realized that when you find the right person, you don't waste time. Casey looked genuinely confused by where this was heading. I know we haven't been dating very long, Tyler continued, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. Casey, you make me want to be a better man, and I think we could build something really special together. Mom gasped as Tyler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet jewelry box. I'm not proposing tonight, Tyler said with a grin, but I wanted everyone to see what I picked out for when the time is right. He opened the box to reveal what appeared to be a diamond engagement ring. The family erupted in excited chatter while Casey stared at the ring with obvious shock. Tyler, Casey said slowly, we've only been dating for 3 weeks. I know it's fast, Tyler said, closing the box and slipping it back into his pocket. But when you know, you know. And I definitely know. Casey forced a smile, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She clearly had no idea that Tyler was even considering marriage, let alone that he'd already purchased a ring. As the family continued to fuss over Tyler's romantic gesture, I found myself wondering where my 25-year-old brother had gotten the money for a BMW expensive clothes and what appeared to be a significant engagement ring. Even if his hotel job paid well, he'd only been working there for a few weeks, according to his own timeline. Something was definitely wrong with this picture, and I was becoming more determined to figure out what it was. The weekend after the family dinner, I couldn't get the inconsistencies in Tyler's story out of my mind. Between my excitement about the resort contract and my growing suspicion about my brother's sudden wealth, I was having trouble focusing on anything else. On Saturday morning, I decided to do some detective work. I drove back to the Grand Royal Resort downtown, but this time I parked in the lot and went inside. The lobby was clean and functional, with standard hotel furnishings and a small front desk staffed by a single clerk. I approached the desk with what I hoped was a casual demeanor. "Hi there," I said to the young woman behind the counter. "I'm supposed to meet my brother here for lunch. He's Tyler Matthews, one of your managers." The clerk looked confused for a moment, then glanced at a schedule posted behind the desk. "I'm sorry, but I don't see any managers named Tyler Matthews," she said politely. "Could you double-check the name?" "Maybe he's not working today," I said, trying to hide my surprise. He mentioned something about being the assistant manager of guest services. The clerk's expression became even more puzzled. "Sir, I've been working here for 2 years, and we don't have an assistant manager of guest services position. We have a general manager, Mrs. Dorothy Henderson, and then just front desk staff and housekeeping." I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to maintain my composure. "You know what, I probably got the hotel name wrong," I said with a forced laugh. "My brother works at so many different properties I can never keep track." I left the hotel feeling stunned and confused. If Tyler didn't work at the Grand Royal Resort as a manager, where was he actually employed, and where was all his money coming from? On Monday morning, I had my contract signing meeting with Southwest Luxury Resorts. The ceremony took place in a conference room at their corporate headquarters, a gleaming office building in Scottsdale. Marcus Rodriguez was there, along with 2 other executives, a lawyer and an accountant. "Braden, welcome to the Southwest Luxury family," Marcus said as we shook hands across the polished conference table. "We're genuinely excited about this partnership." The contracts were more comprehensive than anything I'd ever signed in my life. The scope of work included landscape design and maintenance for 12 resort properties across Arizona and Nevada, with detailed specifications for everything from irrigation systems to seasonal flower displays. "The initial payment of $400,000 will be transferred to your business account this afternoon," the accountant explained as I signed the final page. "This covers the first quarter's retainer and equipment acquisition costs. $400,000. I had to concentrate to keep my hands from shaking as I wrote my signature. After the meeting, I drove home in a daze. My phone was already buzzing with notifications from my bank app confirming that the largest deposit in my company's history had just been processed. That afternoon, I decided to investigate Tyler's situation more thoroughly. I called the hotel where he claimed to work and asked to speak with the manager. When Dorothy Henderson came to the phone, I explained that I was Tyler Matthews' brother and was trying to reach him. "Oh yes, Tyler," Dorothy said warmly. "He's a nice young man. He started working part-time at our front desk about 2 weeks ago. Let me see if he's scheduled today." Part-time front desk clerk, not assistant manager of guest services. "Actually, could I ask what his job duties involve?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Well, he works the evening shift a few nights a week, checking guests in and out, answering phones, that sort of thing," Dorothy explained. "Nothing too complicated, but he seems eager to learn." I thanked Dorothy and hung up my suspicions now confirmed. Tyler was lying about his job, his position, and presumably everything else he'd been telling the family. But that still didn't explain the money. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to Tyler's behavior and spending patterns. He'd been taking the family out to expensive dinners, always insisting on paying the check with cash. He'd bought new clothes that looked like they came from high-end department stores. And then there was the engagement ring he'd shown everyone. On Thursday evening, I decided to visit my parents unannounced, hoping to catch Tyler there and observe him more closely. When I arrived, I found Dad sitting alone in the living room, looking troubled. "Hey, Dad, where is everyone?" I asked, settling into the chair across from him. "Your mother went to book club and Tyler's out with Casey again," Dad replied. "Braden, can I ask you something?" I nodded, sensing that something was bothering him. "Have you noticed anything strange about your brother lately?" Dad asked carefully. "I mean, I'm happy about his success, but everything seems to be happening so fast." "What do you mean?" Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, your mother and I were looking at our bank statements yesterday and we noticed some withdrawals that we don't remember making. Nothing huge, but a few $100s here and there over the past month. My blood ran cold. What kind of withdrawals? ATM withdrawals, mostly late at night or early in the morning, Dad explained. Your mother thinks she might have forgotten about them, but I'm usually pretty good about keeping track of our spending. I felt sick to my stomach. Tyler had access to my parents' banking information because Mom had added him to their account years ago, when he was in college, supposedly for emergency situations. Dad, do you still have Tyler listed on your bank account? Well, yes, Dad said slowly. He's been on there since college. We never took him off because we figured it would be easier if there was ever a family emergency. Have you asked him about these withdrawals? Dad looked uncomfortable. I mentioned it to him last weekend, and he said he'd borrowed some money for a work emergency. Something about having to cover a deposit for his uniform and some training materials. He promised to pay it back as soon as his first management paycheck came through. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made me angry and heartbroken at the same time. Tyler was stealing money from our parents to fund his fake lifestyle, and they were so proud of his supposed success that they weren't asking the hard questions. Dad, how much money are we talking about? I asked gently. Maybe $1,500 or $2,000 total, Dad said. Like I said, nothing that would put us in a bad spot, but it's still our retirement savings. I spent the rest of the evening with Dad carefully probing about Tyler's recent behavior without revealing my own suspicions. The more we talked, the more concerned Dad became. He mentioned that Tyler had been vague about specific details of his job, that his schedule seemed inconsistent with what a hotel manager might work, and that his sudden wealth didn't quite match the timeline of his employment. By the time I left my parents' house that night, I was convinced that Tyler was living a completely fabricated life, funded by theft from the two people who loved him most. The worst part was that Mom and Dad were so desperate to believe in Tyler's success that they were ignoring obvious red flags. I drove home knowing that I had to confront Tyler directly, but I also realized that I needed to be careful about how I handled the situation. If I accused him publicly without absolute proof, he could easily turn the family against me by claiming I was jealous of his success. Instead, I decided to gather more evidence and plan a confrontation that would expose the truth in a way that couldn't be denied or deflected. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Tyler was stealing money to create a fake image of success, I was sitting on a legitimate multi-million-dollar business opportunity that I hadn't even told my family about. The contrast between his deception and my actual achievement felt surreal. But I was beginning to realize that this situation was bigger than just sibling rivalry or family dynamics. Tyler's behavior was hurting people I cared about, and it was escalating in ways that could cause serious long-term damage to our family's trust and financial security. Something had to be done, and soon. On Friday afternoon, I called Tyler and asked him to meet me for coffee. I told him I wanted to talk about business opportunities and get his advice about managing employees playing to his ego to ensure he'd show up. We met at a small cafe near downtown, and Tyler arrived wearing yet another expensive outfit I'd never seen before. This time, it was a designer polo shirt and dress pants that probably cost more than most people spend on clothes in 6 months. So what's this about business advice? Tyler asked as we sat down with our drinks. Finally ready to learn something from your little brother? I decided to start with gentle probing before moving to direct confrontation. I'm curious about your hotel, I said casually. The Grand Royal Resort downtown, right? That's right, Tyler replied confidently. Premier location, 5-star rating, the works. I was in the area yesterday and thought about stopping by to see your office. I continued. But I wasn't sure which building it was. Tyler's expression flickered for just a moment before he recovered. Oh, well, it's the tall glass building on Central Avenue. But I was in meetings all day anyway, so you probably wouldn't have been able to see much. I nodded as if his answer made perfect sense, even though I knew the Grand Royal Resort was definitely not a tall glass building. Casey seems really nice, I said, changing the subject. How long did you say you two have been together? About a month now, Tyler replied. She's amazing. Really successful in her modeling career, tons of potential. Where did she go to school? I asked. Tyler paused, clearly not expecting detailed questions about Casey's background. She went to college in California, UCLA, I think. Studied communications or something like that. I made a mental note to fact-check that information if I got the chance. Tyler, can I ask you something as your brother? I said, shifting to a more serious tone. Sure, shoot. Where are you getting the money for all this? I asked directly. The car, the clothes, the expensive dinners, that engagement ring. Even a good hotel management job wouldn't generate that kind of cash flow in just a few weeks. Tyler's face hardened immediately. What's that supposed to mean? I'm not trying to be confrontational, I said, keeping my voice calm. I'm just concerned. Everything seems to be happening really fast, and I want to make sure you're not getting yourself into any kind of financial trouble. My finances are none of your business, Tyler snapped. Just because you're stuck running a lawn care service doesn't mean I can't be successful in my career. Tyler, I went by the Grand Royal Resort, I said quietly. I spoke with Dorothy Henderson, the actual manager. Tyler's face went pale, but he quickly shifted into defensive mode. What are you stalking me now? He demanded. What gives you the right to check up on my job? She told me you work part-time at the front desk, I continued. 3 nights a week, checking people in and out. There's no assistant manager position, Tyler. There never was. Tyler stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor loudly enough to draw stares from other customers. You're just jealous, he said, his voice rising. You can't stand that your little brother is finally more successful than you are. So you're trying to sabotage me with lies and made-up stories. Tyler, sit down, I said firmly. We need to talk about this. No, we don't, Tyler shot back. I don't have to listen to this garbage from someone who's never accomplished anything meaningful in his entire life. He stormed out of the cafe, leaving me sitting alone with the uncomfortable attention of everyone around us. I paid for our drinks and left knowing that I'd confirmed my suspicions, but also that Tyler was now aware that I knew the truth. That evening, Tyler called our parents and told them I'd been harassing him at work and spreading lies about his job. According to Mom, who called me an hour later, Tyler claimed I was so jealous of his success that I was trying to ruin his relationship with Casey and damage his reputation at the hotel. Braden, I'm very disappointed in you, Mom said over the phone. Your brother is finally doing well for himself, and instead of being supportive, you're trying to tear him down. Mom, I think you should ask Tyler some specific questions about his job, I said carefully. Ask him for details about his daily responsibilities, his supervisor's name, his work schedule. I don't need to interrogate my own son, Mom replied coldly. Tyler has always been honest with us, and I trust him completely. The conversation ended badly with Mom essentially telling me that I needed to apologize to Tyler and stop causing family drama. Over the weekend, Tyler went into full damage control mode. He brought Casey to Sunday dinner at our parents' house and spent the entire evening painting me as the jealous older brother who couldn't handle his success. He told elaborate stories about difficult days at work, demanding guests, and complex management decisions he'd had to make. Casey looked increasingly uncomfortable throughout the evening, especially when Tyler started describing celebrity guests and high-profile events that supposedly took place at the hotel. I caught her giving Tyler skeptical looks several times, as if she was hearing these stories for the first time herself. After dinner, Tyler made an announcement that shocked everyone. Casey and I have been talking, and we've decided not to wait, Tyler said, pulling out the engagement ring again. Life's too short to postpone happiness because of other people's negativity. He got down on one knee right there in our parents' living room and proposed to Casey in front of the entire family. Casey looked absolutely stunned, staring at Tyler as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Tyler, this is so sudden, Casey said, clearly flustered. I mean, we've only been dating for a month. Sometimes you just know, Tyler replied. still kneeling with the ring extended toward her. I love you, Casey, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. The pressure in the room was overwhelming. Mom and Dad were beaming with pride, obviously expecting Casey to say yes. Tyler was performing for an audience, using the proposal as a way to demonstrate his commitment and stability. Casey looked around the room at all the expectant faces, then back down at Tyler. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, I'll marry you." The family erupted in celebration, while I sat there feeling sick to my stomach. Tyler was manipulating everyone, including Casey, and using their emotions to deflect attention from his lies and theft. As the evening continued with congratulations and celebration planning, I realized that Tyler's deception was spiraling completely out of control. He was now engaged to a woman he'd been dating for a month, planning a wedding he couldn't afford, and promising a future built entirely on stolen money and fabricated achievements. But I also realized that his escalating lies were creating more opportunities for the truth to come out. The bigger the deception became, the harder it would be to maintain, and eventually something would give way. I just hoped that when it happened, the people I cared about wouldn't be too badly hurt in the process. Later that evening, as the family was saying goodbye, I caught Casey alone for a moment, while Tyler was loading gifts into his car. "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "I hope you'll be very happy together." Casey looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Thank you, Braden. Tyler talks about you a lot." "Mostly complaints, I imagine," I replied with a weak smile. "Actually, no," Casey said quietly. "He talks about how successful you are with your business, how proud he is that his brother is an entrepreneur. It's like he admires you, but doesn't want to admit it." Her words caught me off guard. "Casey, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you know where Tyler works? Have you ever been to his hotel?" Casey's expression became guarded. "Why do you ask?" "I'm just concerned about him," I said honestly. "Some things don't seem to add up, and I'm worried he might be in over his head with something." Casey stared at me for a long moment, as if she was deciding whether to trust me with something important. "I've never been to his work," she said finally. "Every time I suggest stopping by or meeting him there, he says it's against company policy or he's too busy. And some of the stories he tells, they seem a little too dramatic to be real." Before I could respond, Tyler returned and immediately inserted himself between Casey and me. "What are you two talking about?" he asked, with forced casualness. "Just getting to know my future brother-in-law," Casey replied, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. As I drove home that night, I realized that Casey was starting to have her own doubts about Tyler's honesty. That gave me hope that when the truth finally came out, she might be prepared to handle it better than the rest of my family. But I also knew that Tyler's engagement announcement had bought him more time and goodwill from our parents. They were now planning a celebration party for the following weekend, inviting extended family and friends to meet Casey and congratulate the happy couple. Tyler was doubling down on his deception in the most public way possible, and I was running out of time to stop him before the situation became completely unsalvageable. The week following Tyler's engagement announcement was a whirlwind of party planning and family excitement. Mom threw herself into organizing what she kept calling the celebration of the year, inviting everyone we knew to meet Casey and toast Tyler's success. Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own overwhelming developments. The Southwest Luxury Resorts contract had officially begun, and I was coordinating with vendors, hiring additional staff, and managing the logistics of scaling my business up dramatically. The first resort project was scheduled to begin the following month, and I was working 16-hour days to ensure everything was ready. On Wednesday, I received a call that changed everything. "Braden, this is Marcus Rodriguez. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "Not at all, Marcus. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to let you know that the board of directors would like to meet you personally," Marcus said. "They're flying in from Los Angeles for a site visit next week, and they've specifically requested to have dinner with you and discuss the partnership." My heart started racing. Meeting the board of directors of Southwest Luxury Resorts was an opportunity that could open doors I'd never even dreamed of. That would be an honor, I replied. When were you thinking? Actually, I know this might be unusual, but they're only available Saturday evening, Marcus said. I realize that's probably family time for you, but they're flying out Sunday morning, and this is the only window in their schedule. Saturday evening was Tyler's engagement party. I stared at my calendar, weighing my options. This was potentially the most important business meeting of my life, but missing Tyler's party would create a family crisis that I wasn't sure I was prepared to handle. Then I had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Marcus, would it be possible for the dinner to be more casual? I asked. My family is actually having a celebration this Saturday evening, and I'm wondering if your board members might be interested in experiencing a real American family gathering. Marcus paused for a moment, clearly not expecting this suggestion. You know, that's actually an interesting idea, he said slowly. These are people who spend most of their time in boardrooms and five-star restaurants. They might find a family barbecue refreshingly authentic. We talked through the logistics, and Marcus agreed to check with the board members about attending Tyler's party as my guests. Within 2 hours, he called back to confirm that all 3 directors were enthusiastic about the unconventional meeting format. This meant I would be bringing 3 multi-millionaire resort executives to a party celebrating my brother's fake promotion and fraudulent engagement. The irony was almost too much to handle. But it also meant I would finally have the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth about both Tyler's deception and my own legitimate success. On Thursday afternoon, I drove to the bank where my parents had their accounts and requested a meeting with the security department. I explained that I was concerned about unauthorized access to my elderly parents' account and wanted to review recent transaction histories. The security officer, a professional woman named Jennifer Martinez, was very helpful once I provided proper identification, proving my relationship to my parents. I can see several ATM withdrawals over the past 6 weeks, Jennifer said, reviewing the computer screen. They're all within normal limits for account activity, but they do follow an unusual pattern. Most occurred late at night or very early in the morning, which is different from your parents' typical banking habits. Is there any way to determine who made these withdrawals? I asked. Well, the transactions were made with the correct PIN number, Jennifer explained. But I can tell you that they all occurred at ATM locations near downtown Phoenix, specifically around the area where the Grand Royal Resort is located. The evidence was mounting, but I needed more concrete proof before I could make accusations that would destroy family relationships. That evening, I called Dorothy Henderson at the Grand Royal Resort, again this time with a specific request. Mrs. Henderson, this is Braden Matthews, again Tyler's brother. I wanted to ask you about Tyler's schedule this week. Oh, let me check, Dorothy said pleasantly. He's been working Tuesday and Thursday evenings this week, and he's scheduled for Saturday evening as well. Saturday evening, the night of his own engagement party. Are you sure about Saturday? I asked. That seems like an unusual time for him to be working. Well, yes, he specifically requested to work Saturday night, Dorothy explained. He said he needed the extra hours to save money for something special. Tyler had scheduled himself to work during his own engagement party, presumably, so he could have an excuse to leave early and avoid too much scrutiny about his supposed management position. On Friday, I made one final investigative move. I drove to the address that Casey had given my parents as her residence, curious about Tyler's mysterious model girlfriend. The address led me to a modest apartment complex in central Phoenix. Nothing fancy, but clean and well-maintained. I sat in my truck for a few minutes trying to decide if I was crossing a line by investigating Casey's living situation. My question was answered when Casey herself emerged from one of the ground floor apartments wearing what appeared to be a work uniform and carrying a large tote bag. She didn't see me as she got into an older Honda Civic and drove away. I followed at a distance, feeling somewhat guilty about essentially stalking my brother's fiancée. Casey drove to a strip mall and parked in front of a family restaurant called Mel's Diner. She went inside and I could see her through the window tying on an apron and beginning what was clearly a waitressing shift. So Casey wasn't a model. She was a waitress at a family diner working what looked like a standard service job to pay her bills. There was nothing wrong with being a waitress, of course, but it meant that Tyler had been lying about her career just as much as he'd been lying about his own. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on everything I'd discovered. Tyler was working part-time as a front desk clerk at a mid-range hotel, not as a manager at a luxury resort. Casey was a waitress at a diner, not a model with an agency in Los Angeles. Tyler had been stealing money from our parents to fund his fake lifestyle. And he was now engaged to a woman who he'd been lying to about his job, his income, and probably everything else. Meanwhile, I was about to host 3 board members from one of the largest hospitality companies in the Southwest at Tyler's engagement party, where I would potentially reveal a multi-million-dollar business partnership that would dwarf anything Tyler could imagine. Saturday evening was going to be very interesting. That night, I called my parents to let them know I was bringing some business associates to Tyler's party. "Business associates?" Mom asked, clearly surprised. "Braden, this is Tyler's night. I don't think it's appropriate to turn his celebration into a networking event. These are very important clients who are only in town for one night," I explained. "I promise they won't take attention away from Tyler. They're just interested in experiencing a real American family gathering." Dad got on the phone and was more understanding. "What kind of business are these people in?" "Luxury resorts," I said simply. "They're executives with Southwest Luxury Resorts." There was silence on the line for a moment. "Luxury resorts," Mom said slowly, "like hotels." "Exactly like hotels," I confirmed. In fact, they might have some interesting perspectives to share with Tyler about the hospitality industry. I could practically hear the wheels turning in my parents' minds. The idea of having real hotel executives at Tyler's party was too appealing for them to refuse, especially since it would give Tyler an opportunity to network with people in his supposed field. "Well, I suppose that would be all right," Mom said finally, "as long as they understand that this is Tyler's celebration." "I'm sure they'll be very respectful," I assured her. "And who knows, maybe Tyler can share some of his management insights with them." After I hung up, I sat in my living room planning exactly how I wanted Saturday evening to unfold. I wasn't interested in humiliating Tyler or destroying the family, but I was determined to stop his deception before it caused more damage to people I cared about. The truth was going to come out one way or another. I just wanted to make sure it happened in a way that gave everyone, including Tyler, a chance to learn and grow from the experience. But first, Tyler was going to have to face the consequences of the choices he'd made. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of perfect Arizona weather that made our state famous. I arrived at my parents' house early to help set up, bringing with me a folder of documents that I hoped I wouldn't need to use. The backyard looked beautiful. Mom and Dad had strung lights between the trees, set up several tables with white tablecloths, and arranged flowers from their garden as centerpieces. It was clearly a labor of love, and I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that the evening might not unfold the way they had planned. Tyler arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, wearing what appeared to be yet another new suit. Casey was with him, looking lovely in a blue dress, but seeming somewhat subdued. I noticed that she kept fidgeting with her engagement ring, turning it around her finger, as if she wasn't quite used to wearing it yet. "So where are these business associates of yours?" Tyler asked me as we gathered on the patio. His tone was friendly enough, but I could detect an undercurrent of suspicion. "They should be here within the hour," I replied. "I think you'll find them very interesting to talk with." Extended family began arriving around 6:30. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia came bearing gifts for the happy couple, followed by my cousins Jake and Samantha with their children. Everyone was in a festive mood, excited to celebrate Tyler's engagement and hear more about his success in the hotel industry. At 7 o'clock, precisely 3 black sedans pulled up in front of the house. Marcus Rodriguez emerged from the first car, followed by 3 impeccably dressed individuals who clearly commanded respect wherever they went. "Braden." Marcus said warmly as I approached the front yard to greet them. I'd like you to meet the Southwest Luxury Resorts Board of Directors. This is Patricia Williams, our chairwoman, David Chen, our chief operating officer, and Robert Martinez, our chief financial officer. Each of them was exactly what you'd expect from executives of a major corporation, confident, articulate, and clearly accustomed to high-level business environments. I was momentarily nervous about bringing them into my family's backyard barbecue, but they seemed genuinely pleased to be there. Thank you so much for including us in your family celebration, Patricia Williams said as I led them toward the backyard. Marcus has told us wonderful things about your work, and we're looking forward to getting to know you in a more relaxed setting. When we entered the backyard, the party essentially stopped. Everyone turned to stare at the four impeccably dressed strangers who had just joined our casual family gathering. Everyone, I'd like you to meet some colleagues of mine, I announced. This is Marcus Rodriguez, Patricia Williams, David Chen, and Robert Martinez. They work in the hospitality industry. Tyler immediately perked up, clearly sensing an opportunity to impress people who might be influential in his supposed field. The hospitality industry, Tyler said, approaching the group with obvious enthusiasm. That's fantastic. I'm Tyler Matthews, and I actually work in hotel management myself. How wonderful, Patricia Williams said graciously. What kind of property do you manage? I'm the assistant manager of guest services at the Grand Royal Resort downtown, Tyler replied confidently. 5-star property, very exclusive clientele. I watched the faces of the Southwest luxury executives carefully. Marcus's expression remained neutral, but I caught David Chen and Robert Martinez exchanging a quick glance. The Grand Royal Resort. David Chen repeated slowly. I'm not familiar with that property. What company operates it? Tyler's confidence faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. It's independently owned, he said. Very boutique, very high-end. We pride ourselves on personalized service that the big chains can't match. That's interesting, Patricia Williams said politely. We're always interested in learning from smaller properties. What's your occupancy rate been running? Tyler clearly had no idea how to answer questions about occupancy rates, revenue management, or any of the other topics that actual hotel executives would naturally discuss. Well, we're pretty much booked solid most of the time, Tyler said vaguely. You know how it is with luxury properties. People are willing to pay premium prices for premium experiences. As Tyler continued trying to impress the executives with his fabricated expertise, I noticed Casey watching the conversation with obvious discomfort. She kept glancing at Tyler with expressions that suggested she was hearing him lie in real time. After about 20 minutes of Tyler's performance, Marcus Rodriguez approached me privately. Braden, I don't want to cause any family problems, Marcus said quietly, but I think you should know that there's no assistant manager position at the Grand Royal Resort. It's a modest business hotel with about 40 rooms. Nice place, but definitely not 5-star luxury. I know, I replied simply. I've been trying to figure out how to handle this situation. Marcus nodded understanding. Family dynamics can be complicated. How can we help? Before I could answer, Tyler had moved on to regaling the executives with stories about celebrity guests and million-dollar events supposedly held at his hotel. The stories were becoming increasingly elaborate and obviously fictional. At 8 o'clock, Tyler's phone rang. He answered it with his characteristic dramatic flair. Tyler Matthews, assistant manager, speaking, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Yes, I can absolutely handle that crisis. No problem, I'll be right there. He hung up and turned to the party with an apologetic expression. Sorry everyone, but duty calls, Tyler announced. We have a situation at the hotel that requires immediate management attention. VIP guest emergency. This was clearly Tyler's exit strategy, his way of leaving the party before anyone could ask too many detailed questions about his job. What kind of emergency? David Chen asked with genuine professional curiosity. Tyler paused clearly, not expecting follow-up questions. Well, it's confidential guest information, but let's just say when you're dealing with high-profile clientele, discretion is everything. Of course, Patricia Williams said understandingly. But surely as assistant manager, you have staff who can handle most emergencies. At our properties, managers only get called in for the most serious situations. Tyler was clearly struggling now. Well, it's a very serious situation. Tyler. I said quietly, maybe you should tell everyone where you really work. The entire party went silent. Tyler stared at me with a mixture of anger and panic. What's that supposed to mean? He demanded. It means I know you work part-time at the front desk of the Grand Royal Resort, I said calmly. 3 evenings a week checking guests in and out, including tonight. Tyler's face went white, but he quickly shifted into attack mode. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, Braden, but this is completely inappropriate, Tyler said loudly. You're trying to sabotage my career because you can't handle your little brother being successful? Tyler, Casey said quietly. Is that true? Do you work at the front desk? Tyler spun around to face his fiancée. Casey, don't listen to him. He's been spreading lies about me for weeks because he's jealous. I spoke with Dorothy Henderson, I continued. She's the actual manager of the Grand Royal Resort. She told me about your schedule, your job duties, and your employment start date. 2 weeks ago, part-time front desk clerk. The silence in the backyard was deafening. Tyler looked around at all the faces staring at him, clearly searching for a way to deflect or escape. And the money, Tyler, I said softly. Where did you get the money for the car? The clothes? The ring? Mom and Dad suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Dad's face was pale as he began to put the pieces together. Tyler, Dad said slowly, did you take money from our account? Tyler's composure finally cracked completely. It was just temporary, he said desperately. I was going to pay it all back as soon as I got promoted. I just needed to make a good impression to show everyone that I could be successful. The admission hit the family like a physical blow. Mom actually gasped and put her hand to her mouth. How much money? Dad asked quietly. About $4,000. Tyler said, tears starting to form in his eyes. But I can pay it back. I'm going to get promoted soon, and then I'll have the money to cover everything. Casey was staring at Tyler as if she'd never seen him before. Tyler, you lied to me about everything. Your job, your income, your whole life. Casey, please, Tyler said desperately. I can explain everything. I did it for us to build a future together. You did it with stolen money, Casey replied, pulling the engagement ring off her finger. I can't marry someone who lies to me and steals from his own family. She handed the ring back to Tyler and walked toward the house, clearly intending to leave. Casey, wait. Tyler called after her, but she didn't stop. The party stood in stunned silence as Tyler's entire fabricated world collapsed around him. I felt terrible for him despite everything he'd done. Watching someone you love self-destruct is never easy, even when they've brought it on themselves. Tyler, I said gently, you need to talk to Mom and Dad privately, and you need to get help paying them back. Tyler looked at me with a mixture of hatred and desperation. Why did you do this to me? He demanded. Why couldn't you just let me have this? Because you were hurting people I care about, I replied. And because the truth always comes out eventually. This way at least we can deal with it as a family. That's when I realized it was time to reveal my own news. Actually, there's something I need to tell all of you, I said, turning to address my parents and the rest of the family. The reason I invited Marcus and his colleagues tonight is because they're my business partners. I pulled the contract folder from my bag and handed it to Dad. 3 weeks ago, Southwest Luxury Resorts offered my company an exclusive contract to handle landscape design and maintenance for 12 resort properties across Arizona and Nevada. I explained. The contract is worth $2.4 million over 3 years. Dad opened the folder and stared at the documents with obvious shock. $2.4 million? Mom whispered. The first payment of $400,000 was deposited in my business account last week, I continued. I've been waiting for the right time to tell everyone, and I thought tonight would be appropriate. Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward with a warm smile. Your son is an exceptionally talented businessman, he told my parents. We're honored to work with him. The contrast between Tyler's deception and my legitimate success was stark and uncomfortable. I hadn't intended to humiliate Tyler, but the timing had worked out in a way that made the comparison unavoidable. Braden Patricia Williams said we should probably let your family process all of this privately. Thank you for including us in your celebration, and we look forward to our continued partnership. The three executives said their goodbyes graciously and left with Marcus giving the family space to deal with the revelations of the evening. After they left, we all sat in the backyard, trying to make sense of what had happened. Tyler was crying openly now, the weight of his deception finally hitting him fully. I'm so sorry, Tyler said through his tears. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted you to be proud of me, the way you're proud of Braden. Mom went to Tyler and put her arms around him. Honey, we've always been proud of you. You didn't need to lie or steal to earn our love. But you always treated Braden like he was more successful, Tyler said. Even when he was just starting his landscaping business, you talked about him like he was this great entrepreneur. I felt like nothing I did was ever good enough. Dad sat down next to Tyler and put his hand on his shoulder. Son, that's not true. We've made mistakes in how we've treated both of you boys, but it was never because we loved one of you more than the other. Over the next several hours, we had the most honest family conversation I could remember having in years. Tyler admitted that he'd been struggling with feelings of inadequacy and jealousy for most of his adult life. Mom and Dad acknowledged that they had inadvertently created competition between Tyler and me through their comments and comparisons. I told them about my own struggles with feeling like I had to prove myself and how I'd kept the resort contract secret, partly because I was afraid it would make Tyler feel even worse about his own situation. The truth is, I wanted to share this success with all of you, I said, but I also wanted Tyler to have his moment to shine. I never imagined he was creating that moment through deception and theft. Tyler looked at me with genuine remorse. Braden, I'm sorry for everything I said about your business. I know how hard you've worked, and you deserve every bit of success you've achieved. And you deserve success too, Tyler, I replied. But it has to be real success built on honest work and authentic relationships. We talked about practical solutions for the immediate problems. Tyler would need to pay back the money he'd stolen, which meant he'd probably need to work more hours at his actual job and possibly find additional employment. He would also need to have an honest conversation with Casey about their relationship, though, given her reaction that evening. It seemed unlikely she would be willing to give him another chance. Tyler, there's something else we need to discuss, Dad said seriously. Taking money from our account without permission is theft, even if you're family. We're not going to press charges, but you need to understand how serious this is. Tyler nodded solemnly. I know, and I'll pay back every penny even if it takes me years. Actually, I said I might have a solution for that. Everyone looked at me with curiosity. My landscaping business is expanding rapidly because of this resort contract, I explained. I'm going to need to hire additional employees, including office staff equipment operators and project coordinators. If Tyler is serious about turning his life around, I could offer him a job. Tyler stared at me in disbelief. After everything I've done, you'd give me a job? It wouldn't be charity, I said firmly. I'd expect you to work hard, show up on time, and prove that you're trustworthy. But yes, if you're willing to start over and do things the right way, I think we could help each other out. Tyler started crying again, but this time it seemed like tears of relief rather than despair. I would love that, he said. I promise you won't regret giving me this chance. We'll see, I replied. Trust has to be earned back, Tyler. It's going to take time and consistent effort. As the evening wound down, I reflected on how dramatically everything had changed in just a few hours. Tyler's house of lies had collapsed, but in its place, we'd found an opportunity for genuine healing and growth as a family. Mom and Dad apologized for the years of favoritism and comparison that had contributed to Tyler's insecurity. Tyler apologized for his deception and theft and committed to making amends through honest work and changed behavior. And I realized that my own success meant much more when it could be used to help someone I cared about get back on the right path. 6 months later, Tyler had paid back every dollar he'd stolen from our parents. He was working full-time for my landscaping company, starting in an entry-level position but showing genuine aptitude for the work. He'd moved into a modest apartment and was slowly rebuilding his financial stability through honest means. Casey had decided not to continue their relationship, but they'd ended things amicably once Tyler had been honest with her about his situation. Tyler was dating someone new, now a teacher named Sarah, who knew exactly who he was and what he did for a living. My business was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. The Southwest Luxury Resorts contract had led to additional opportunities, and I was now employing 15 people full-time. Tyler had become one of my most reliable employees, and our working relationship had actually strengthened our bond as brothers. Most importantly, our family had learned to communicate more honestly with each other. Mom and Dad made conscious efforts to treat Tyler and me equally, celebrating our individual achievements without creating competition between us. The whole experience taught me that success isn't just about professional achievement or financial gain. Real success comes from building authentic relationships, maintaining integrity in your actions, and using your blessings to lift up the people around you. Tyler learned that shortcuts and deception ultimately lead to more problems than they solve, and that genuine self-worth comes from honest effort and authentic relationships, rather than external appearances. And our family learned that love and support have to be expressed clearly and equally, because assumptions and unexpressed feelings can create devastating misunderstandings. Looking back, that Saturday evening was one of the most painful and transformative experiences of my life. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter for all of us, built on truth, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most meaningful growth, and sometimes the hardest truths open the door to the deepest healing. That's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Have you ever been in a situation where someone close to you was living a lie that was hurting themselves and others? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories and thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of honesty in family relationships. Thank you for listening, and remember that the truth, even when it's difficult, is always the foundation for genuine healing and growth.